the notification button. Join the Lookup TV movement now. The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance is recommended.
It is the 27th day of July 2021, day 2 of opening schools. Schools across the country are opening this week, and there are different concerns for different stakeholders. Parents decrying the high cost of school fees as well as all the other requirements. And we also have teachers who have the concern of COVID-19 as the fourth wave has been said to be approaching. And of course, Grade 5 rollout now in schools. The CBC program, we'll be talking about that. Is the competency-based curriculum working? What do you know about it? You can talk to me using the SMS number 20374 at Lookup TV on Twitter, Lookup TV on Facebook. And with me on set, right next to me is Samson Mung'athia, who is an educationist. And on the other end, we have Patrick Mwenda, who is a secondary school teacher. Welcome to the discussion, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we want to understand the CBC because the grade 5 has now been rolled out. But even before then, this is the first week. Schools are opening right in the middle of the year. So let's talk a little bit about that. It is unusual, but given the times, the COVID-19 pandemic, so has this affected students in any way? And parents as well, different stakeholders. Yes, Mung'athia.
Of course, we're in a very peculiar times, very different seasons, because it's the very first time maybe in history we're having schools opening for first term in the middle of the year, at a time when they should be closing, in fact, for second term, for the already after second term. But then again, this has inconvenienced not only the learners, but actually the entire system, all the stakeholders, talk of teachers, because you also have to adjust again to that. Talk of parents who are decrying school fees. You know, you have just paid school fees in May. You are again coming to pay in July, and again you're expecting to pay in October. You know, the pressure that is on parents is so high. Again, also to every other stakeholders, talk of people who have to do the policy regulations and all these things, because they have to cover up for time. And then they are the pressure also to pursue and be on time and ensure that everything runs very well. So to every player in the industry or in the sector, there is some level of inconvenience.
Okay. And Patrick, you are a secondary school teacher, and schools have started opening. And there was a concern from a lot of teachers across the country about COVID-19. There is a threat that it could surge, the cases could surge during this time, especially during this month. And in classes, are we still congested? Are we able to get that safe social distancing?
Well, thank you again for having me. I want to say that possibly, like my friend has just said, we're opening schools on a very unusual times. And of course, 1 year down the line since, 1 year and some months since COVID came to our country, and we've been having a lot of speculations on what next. We went for a long holiday since March to January. That is close to a year that went missing in the academic calendar. So that's not done. We were now forced to come back to school. By the situations, of course, we couldn't say let's now close down our education sector. We have to move. So the biggest question now we should be seeking to address is how do we readjust very fast and catch up with our usual calendars. Of course, a lot has been said about the preparation of schools in different ways of addressing COVID. Truth be said is that we are just surviving on mercies of God. We're just surviving. There's nothing much we do.
That has been changed.
Because as much as, while I'm one of the stakeholders in the education sector, we cannot run away from the fact that as a country, we are not preparing for anything in terms of how we address COVID. Because since last year, in early this year, we resumed last year with Form 4s when they came for their second term in last year, early October. Mm-hmm. The government and relevant ministry authorities have been saying we are doing something to address COVID. Truth be said is that there is nothing much that was done. As far as helping people recover from COVID and protect themselves from COVID issues, because we are still having the same number of students in the same schools. No new classes were put into place. No new dorms were put into place. Students are still working as if they're still moving as if there was nothing that came their way as much as COVID is concerned. So, truth, if I'm asked to say, we just ni Mungu anasaidia. Let me just be. Let me just use the simple term. The Swahili. Ni Mungu ndiye anasaidia. Nothing much is happening. We just there surviving. We are happy that the student, to say, the effect of COVID to student is not as such, because since we opened the schools, we had so much crisis in terms of the young people. The effect on them is little bit low, because we haven't heard of a school which had a number of cases of COVID, no infection as such, no special case in terms of COVID to students. So we're happy that we are moving on well, and we cannot say now let's hold ourselves back. We have to readjust ourselves to live by it, because new waves, we've 1, we've 2, we've 3, we are now told of we've 4, and we're still moving on. So we cannot say now let's hold ourselves back. Yeah. We have to keep on moving.
Okay, yeah. And I'd just like to remind our audience that for this conversation, we tried to call out the Ministry of Education, but we are still waiting for feedback, and we had to have a conversation. So here we continue.
Okay.
Yes, and Mung'athia, before we opened up schools, before Magoa said, yeah, now this is the official date we start with, Form 4s and Class 8s, there was a deliberation for a very long time. Should we open schools? Should we not? But we proceeded. We proceeded anyway and opened schools. And now there is a threat of the 4th wave hitting us. And looking at the infrastructure, there's nothing different, like Patrick said. Nothing much that has been changed in our schools. Yeah, we still meet students, their mask is just below the chin, and things are just as they were.
Yeah.
So then what?
I think number one is we're in a very pathetic situation to see so, because it's close to 2 years down the line since Corona came, and we have had all the time to prepare, and we must count ourselves very lucky, and of course thanking God, because we have not had any major issue. Now yesterday I just heard something that is really disturbing to see, because they're saying like only 27% of the teaching population or the teachers have been vaccinated fully. So that tells you we are having around 73% of the teaching professionals. We are talking of teachers, not even the entire school kind of community, okay, who have not been vaccinated. And that tells you we're in a really hard place. Because for me, the first thing that I would have expected, as far as we're not talking about infrastructure, maybe because of cost and whatever that is involved, at least we should have everybody involved in the school kind of programming vaccinated, from teachers to workers to cooks to anybody involved in that kind of an environment to be vaccinated. But I'm very sure with those figures, there are schools whereby there is nobody vaccinated at all, given the figures they're giving of 27% or something like that. So at the end of the day is the question of so what. We'll proceed. Okay. Of course, like Patrick has said, we hope that God's mercies will be sufficient. But then if not, I hope the ministry has a plan that they can work on, whether it means terminating the term again, calling off education, because in terms of preparation, there is nothing that has been done. So the only option that could be there is, should we have a 4th wave that is surging and affecting schools, then we'll have to go back to ground zero. Mm-hmm. Let's close the schools, let's start home, and see what is happening.
Okay, and we've seen the Teacher Service Commission. They say that they might have to disrupt the school calendar in case the cases are going to surge, and also because of just the infrastructure that has not been put in place. So if we're looking at that, if such a thing happens, then what happens to our school calendar? Or would rather be alive than know what happens later?
Possibly, to respond on that, we say let's close the bridge when we get there. Mm-hmm. But it's so unfortunate that the same government that is supposed to be doing whatever they are claiming of is the same government saying we should do this. Now, when the TSC says in case such a situation comes, we have to close schools, then we ask ourselves, then after that, when we close schools, because yes, we went for around 9 months close of the schools. What did they do to address those situations. Because in fact, if they were to do anything, you were supposed to have done the very first time we experienced the COVID issues in our country. Because that is the time everyone was in panic mode. Nowadays, Kenyans have gotten used to it. So you can be sure even if we close schools, then we'll still just be giving student holidays and creating more crises. So to me, I would say, either the wave comes or not, we have to get used to it, like I again said earlier. Because if the best option is not closing schools again. If we have to close the schools, we have to adjust ourselves. Okay. If they have to do anything, let them do it as we move on with the school calendar. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of disparities and a lot of issues to deal with as much as the calendar is concerned. Because right now, we are putting students, teachers, parents, and everyone concerned in the education sector to have a lot of pressure. Assuming now we close again, then we shall have the worst experience ever in the education sector. Okay.
And Mung'athia, you are a parent.
Yeah.
So tell us your experience about what the things you're required to have, what opening day has been like.
I think one, it's a challenge for parents, many parents, of course, because for me, like my case is, I'm a parent of somebody in lower school that's around grade 4, starting grade 4 today. But again, whatever the things that parents are required to have, I'm assuming in public schools that the requirements are not as many because the government is providing, of course, even if it means on paper, because again, we have issues. Yeah, because this is the fact. When we go to these children, the CBC group, the things that they require from whatever the watercolors, crayons, and all these are things that are required to do that part, I literally don't think there is a government school or that has all those resources to do. So it's a lot of expectation from parents, talk of school fees, talk of preparing the students in terms of shopping, in terms of ensuring they're well, they're okay, talk of inconvenience of getting to take the student to school just 1 week after they've been at home, again, maybe traveling distances across the country to various places. So it's very inconveniencing. For every parent, I can say that for every parent, because nobody was really prepared. We've been used to a situation whereby you close for a whole month, you prepare yourself, you pay fees 3 times a year, now you're paying like 5 times.
Even just psychologically.
Yeah, psychologically, it's a crisis really that is affecting everybody. Yeah. Okay.
And what has your experience been like, Patrick, in the school where you work?
Well, particularly on where I work, the experience would be the same with other teachers. The new changes has brought a lot of, possibly what I would say, a lot of one out to both the stakeholders, because we are now coming back to our school for our first term after having a holiday of 1 week. That is holiday, 1 week. Students have been home just for 1 week and they're coming out again for another term, another holiday for 1 week, another term, 1 week. So you can be sure both the teachers, there's a lot of pressure on teachers. One, in terms of syllabus coverage. For example, now we are coming for a first term, which was normally supposed to be 14 weeks. 14 weeks, syllabus is the same, and we are now on a 10 weeks term. And the same term has got a midterm of 1 week, almost 1 week also, because they break for midterm on around Thursday or Friday and come back on Tuesday, Wednesday. So that is almost close to a week. And before they even they restructured themselves and settled down to school, 1 week and some days are over. So ideally, within the same time, we have exams, we have other public holidays and other activities, we have the weekends. So we are even teaching for less than 5 weeks or so, or 4 weeks.
It's a lot of pressure.
And you're supposed to cover the syllabus. When the ministry comes in and the quality assurance people comes in to assess how far you've gone, they will never realize whether you taught for 1 week for this term. You expect them to cover for that syllabus that we're supposed to cover in 14 weeks or 12 weeks prior, and then you're supposed to cover it within 5 weeks. So there's a lot of pressure. Teachers are at times forced to teach during the wee hours of the day, or the weekends, and all those things. So then we are now left wondering whether, with that pressure, is the students able to absorb? We're just forcing things that will still now cause a lot of frustrations to students.
It's a difficult time to be a student.
Difficult time to say. Because now, a student who is supposed to, possibly, I'm teaching in one of the best schools around the country, the students are supposed to get A's. When you bring a student in that school, you expect to get A's. And the student comes and is subjected to a lot of as-written program that comprehending things and understanding is a problem. Then the student now start getting B minuses, C pluses. Someone who came with possibly 400 marks or 390 marks is expected to get a clean A at the end of the day. Now, when he does the exam and he get a B minus, C plus, a B, then this now becomes worse. You're now forced to turn from being a teacher to becoming a counselor to counsel the student, understand that things will change as we move on. Of course, we are giving hope, but you're not sure whether things will change because the program is not changing anytime soon until we recover, possibly in 2 years to come.
Yeah, in 2023, yeah. So, and you brought in a very important point, and you said you were forced to be a counselor as well. So during this period, because it's unusual times, then has your school, for example, catered for that bit? Like the students, since nothing is normal, then they need a little guidance just for them to normalize.
Of course, more often than not, a teacher is seen to be a parent. And nowadays we are even the parent because we spend most of the time, they spend most of the time in school. So by default, one is forced to become a parent and at the same time a counselor. Because we have to identify with the kid, give them a listening eye, talk to them and get to the bottom of their issues and understand why is this student failing, because they have a lot of frustrations. Given that some of them, of course, they have gotten direct impact of COVID from home, they have lost their relatives, others have lost their mothers or their fathers, their sisters, and they come back to school with that mentality. And then you come now subject them to that tough program for them. So definitely they have to run out, they have to get depressed, then you're now forced to sit down as a teacher, be with them over the weekends, extra hours supposed to be free to relax and gain energy as a teacher. You now find yourself in the compound of the school talking to the student, because if you run away now, you come to a student who are frustrated, then there's nothing you'll be doing.
So would you say that there's a gap there, that if schools can provide counselors, or do they have them?
Not really. We don't have counselors in schools. It's a teacher who is supposed to be left as a counselor.
I can just weigh in, because I think from a policy perspective, the people who make policy, if you ask people in the Ministry of Education, they will tell you counseling is part of the school program. Yeah. You know, they have the guidance and counseling as a department and all these things, mostly on paper, but on the ground then there is nothing that is happening there. And that's why I always say there is a very huge disconnect between the policy makers and then the policy implementers, because they have a whole idea of what should be happening, but then they don't implement it. So I don't think there is a school. Of course, I've been around a number of schools, but I don't think there is a school that has a professional counselor. Maybe they have teachers who have taken up the role, gone maybe for some certification or some diploma in counseling and all this. And others are just teachers who have just come out with the knowledge they have from the teaching knowledge that they were taught, and they take up the role to become a counselor. And in other places, not even a single teacher is willing to take that, because it's extra work that has a whole lot of issues again to deal with outside the curriculum. Yeah.
Okay, now at this point I'll introduce now our main agenda for the day, which is the CBC, and grade 5 has now been rolled out. And we have had this curriculum now 4 years on. Yeah. And we started with grade 1, and even before that, when the pilot was being done, there was a lot of opposing opinions. Different people thinking maybe the country is not ready yet, and we proceeded. That's why, Samson, you have to do feathers and come up with things. Homework, you have to help with homework.
And scarecrows.
Yes. So this is where we are now.
Yeah.
So as grade 5 is being rolled out, how far have we come? Is it progress for the CBC? Yes, Samson.
I think I will comment from two perspectives, or I will wear two hats in commenting on that. Okay. One from a professional perspective, and another one from a parent perspective for that case. Number one, I will say, and I've always held this, that CBC was not the right thing for us as a country. Of course, in terms of preparedness, because CBC itself on paper is a very good idea. It is meant to enable students develop competencies, develop skills, develop talents. That's the main focus of CBC. Now, to ensure those people can't really match up academically, they are not disadvantaged, because they can be taken care of in terms of talent, in terms of skill, or in terms of other competencies that they have. But that's CBC on paper. Now, come to implementing it or doing it on the ground. We are getting it very wrong, because at first we're starting it from a very wrong perspective. We are beginning with learners without preparing the educators. Now, you're giving somebody a device or a tool to use without giving them the skill set, without giving them the skills. So you have teachers who are trained on 844. They went through 844 themselves. They were trained on training on 844 again, implementing a very new system that they have not been taught about. So the whole approach that the government has taken, the minister has taken, I think is very wrong. That's why you're ending up with the students going to sweep the market and create scarecrows that were being created in 1980s and 70s by grandparents back at home. And, do all these kind of weird things. In as far as we want to think it's creativity, then we are missing the point. Because again, the implementation of the CBC as it is, we are preparing children for a world that passed long time ago. For example, making scarecrows. You have a child in town in Nairobi making a scarecrow to do what? These are things that were being done in the 1960s and 50s and all that time. Instead of preparing these learners for a technological future, whereby you're talking about artificial intelligence, robots, computers, and all these programming.
So you say things that are more practical and relatable.
Yes, so we are teaching them practical but obsolete skills, instead of teaching them the skills of the future, because the world is evolving towards technology. And us, we're going towards agrarian revolution. So where are we?
Yes, Patrick, if you can weigh in.
Equally resonate with what my friend is saying, because one of the main stakeholders in the education sectors who happens to be a teacher, I love to say that what my friend has just said, that CBC is just on paperwork. But on practical part of it, we are scoring way below the belt. Because trying to look at, we are now heading to grade 5, which is the pioneer cohort of the CBC.
Yeah.
And one would ask himself, what have we so far brought that is new to those students? Because since they were in grade 1, they have moved grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, now grade 5. But the same thing they were doing, we were doing in 844, are the same thing that are being carried on CBC, but just a matter of name change. It was now moved from the 844 to the CBC, the 2663 curriculum. Because looking at it, one would ask, who are the implementers of the CBC? The teacher is supposed to stand at the central point of implementing the CBC. But now you ask yourself, are the teachers being equipped fully to implement the curriculum? I would have thought that we would have started our CBC from the upper part, because at the moment we are admitting the first years and in universities and the colleges to train on education and become teachers. But are we rolling out the program of CBC on those colleges? No, we're just teaching them the normal system we have been teaching them, and we expect now them to come to the ground and be able to evaluate and assess a learner. Of course, they are saying that the new method of assessment is the continuous assessment test that is supposed to grow from a teacher is able to assess the student from the very first day they come to school, when they are at home, and at the end of the term, they give a certain evaluation and they give the result of the kid. That is, either they are meeting the expectation or they are above the expectation. But one now is left to ask himself, are these teachers able to evaluate effectively? Because there is no new skills that they have been given to assess.
But there is a training that they undergo before the rollout.
That was, I think I can just comment on this.
Okay.
Because surely it's very unfair to take somebody for a 2-year training, teacher training. They've been through this system for 16 years, the 844. You take them for 2 years training. Now, all they have learned in those 18 years cumulatively, you want to cancel it in 2 days. You're training somebody to implement a curriculum in 2 days, because the training was normally 2-3 days. I attended one, of course, at some point, and for 1 day, I'd find even the guy who is instructing, that the whole day, whatever I got there, is that they're changing the names from exams to assessment. So it's just painting from red to blue. They are changing course objectives or class objective to class strands. Again, it's just renaming. So at the end of the day, this person has just been given information about what is going to change, but they have not been taught how to change. So in as far as the minister want to hold that they have trained teachers who are doing this, who are doing that, it's a total lie.
So our teachers are still ill-prepared to face the CBC. Patrick, I will come back with you, but we do have to take a very short break. What is your understanding of the CBC? Are you a parent, a teacher, a student? You can talk to me. The SMS number is 20374 at Look Up TV on Twitter, Look Up TV on Facebook. Don't go too far.
Paidika Real Estate brings to you Soteria Gardens, Matu, for as little as 75,000 Kenya shillings on cash payment, 99,000 for installments with 40,000 Kenya shillings deposit and balance in 5 months. For more information, visit our office at Thika Town, Grace House, 3rd floor. Feel free to call us on 0724 256 626 or 0710 265 687.
Welcome to the Natural Juicing Center. We are a unique organization that seeks to provide the community with an alternative healthcare option. We specialize in the use of a natural holistic system that focuses on building health through cleansing and nourishing of the body. We utilize a variety of natural health promoting methods in our services, which include juicing therapy, hydrotherapy, colon cleansing, massage therapy, and a comprehensive cleansing service, among others. Our juices are freshly made and tailored to each and every client's individual needs after evaluation by our team through our free consultation service. You can now book for any service or order for food supplements on our website www.naturaljuicingcenter.co.ke. You can also visit our center in Kahawa Sukari, house number 1334, Kahawa Sukari Avenue. Natural Juicing Center. Your health is your wealth.
Welcome to Look Up Guest House Retreat and Prayer Center. When you first come in, we will be happy to receive you at our reception, then proceed to our cozy and well-equipped accommodation facilities. We aim to provide our guests with a unique, comfortable, and worthwhile experience. Here at Look Up Guest House, we provide our guests with a continuous supply of room amenities. A cool environment for all your retreat activities.
Look Up Guest House Retreat and Prayer Center. For reservation, contact us on info@lookupguesthouse.org or call us on 0746 788 707. Like, follow, subscribe, click the notification button. Join the Look Up TV movement now.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Look Up TV. The hashtag is the big idea right here with me, Nancy Nalima. And today we talk about the competency-based curriculum, the CBC, and grade 5 has now been rolled out. What is it that you know about the CBC? Is it working? The SMS number is 20374. Text in and tweet at Lookup TV on Twitter, Lookup TV on Facebook. With me on set to help break down this issue is Samson Mung'athia right next to me, who is an educationist, and Patrick Mwenda, who is a secondary school teacher. So just before the break, Patrick, you were burning to say something. And actually, I have here that TSC say 90,000 teachers have been trained on the CBC.
Well, I wanted to repeat what my friend was saying, but on the same, the TSC is saying that 90,000 teachers have been trained on CBC. The biggest question is, what have they been trained? Because a teacher has gone for a teacher training for 4 years. Those who go for degree and diploma for 3 years, certificate or 2 years. One has been trained for 2 years, and you want to now to completely overhaul what he has been trained to something new. And then you take him for a training of 2 days. And I happen to have chipped in one of the training for primary school teachers on the same. What they normally go through is just being told what is on the newspapers, and being told that we are supposed now to start treating a student, people differently. We should start triggering how they think, trigger their creativity, but then how is this teacher being taught or not to trigger the creativity on the student? Because one is now left asking, fine, the CBC is supposed to trigger creativity and help the student solve problems. And this student is supposed to be taught by the very teacher who has been trained on the 844 system, and there is nothing new that this teacher has been equipped with to trigger the creativity. Because these are learners who are entirely relying on the teacher. If the teacher is not equipped, they will end up absorbing what the teacher is giving. Unless now we have a different way of training, because you cannot train a teacher within 2 days and we expect to bring a difference. More often, some will even, those training, you find they're supposed to take place from 8 to 4 in the evening. Some teachers will come in, chip in at around 9, go for a phone call break for 30 minutes, come back, take tea, go out again, and then finally the day comes to the end and they're told they're trained. Ideally, what is there is just a matter of those people who are forming the policies, they are not in touch with the reality on the ground. They don't want to listen to the policy implementers, because I think there is a different way we would have addressed it entirely, because the training the teachers are going through would possibly have started from the training colleges. So as we move on, we ensure they are fully trained, possibly take teachers through another training of either 1 year or 2 years, which possibly would be going for a month, that is purely sponsored by the government. Let them go for 2 months on the holidays or 1 month during the holiday, get trained on a college systematically, so that after possibly 1 or 2 years, someone can now say we are now fully equipped to implement the curriculum. But you cannot take someone for a 2-day training and we expect them to come back to teach different things in high school. And then at the same time, what are they being trained? Because the same books, same content, and the same books. How do you now trigger? The books are the same that we're using it for. There's a name change. Content
so you're
is the
told
same.
to trigger, but the question is how?
How do you trigger?
How do you do it?
Well, when you've never gone through the same system of triggering, you've gone through it for. You've not gone through another training to help you in triggering the creativity concept in a learner. And they expect you now to bring a change. So I think we are just living in a denial.
Okay, Samson, and most parents that I even spoke to before we had this conversation here today, a lot of them, they feel involved in their children's assignments. Unlike before, when parents would just ask, "Kuna homework? Go do your homework." You know, like you wouldn't say, it's mathematics, it's algebra, this is what is happening. So right now, parents have been involved. Parents were with students in grade 1, 2, 3. So they feel very involved, and they believe that it's working. So you're a parent, but you're an educationist, so you're well abreast with education matters as well. So are you trying to say that those parents are believing in something that is not really tangible?
Now, I will say two things. There is a difference between being involved and being committed. You know, being involved is just a layman kind of handling things. Because where a parent is coming in this CBC and those who are saying they are being involved, of course they're not being involved in core issues. Because we are talking about CBC that has core issues and then they have some extras that people are doing. For example, a parent is told to go and take a photo of the kid cleaning maybe dishes. So that's what parents are calling involvement. You're told to go to the cyber, download photos of maybe types of food, types of routes, all these things, stick them on a book. There is a book that they're sticking on and then let the kid bring to school. That's what we're calling involvement. But at the end of the day, is the kid going to be assessed based on the photos stuck on a montage, or is the kid going to be assessed based on the content that they're learning in class? Because we find what CBC has done is that it has just reduced the 844 content into something of low quality, such that you find, for example, I will give you this example. Like my daughter goes to school, of course, at the end of the day, they're given some assignment, maybe mathematics. So she comes home, I tell her, do homework. And like 10, 15 minutes, she's like, can I watch TV? So the question is, have you done your homework? She says, yes. Where is it? Now, a grade 4 has been told 2 plus 2, 3 plus 5. No, these things, because they are repeating them, because a teacher has been given a very downgraded version of 844. So they have to carry out this book for the entire year. They don't want to run ahead of time because, of course, the quality issues, the quality assurance guys, and all these other things. So at the end of the day, the parents who are getting involved, it's okay. They're involved, but they're involved in the wrong way. Because what I could have expected them being involved is, the involvement of a parent is not about printing photos and taking photos and, you know, turning them into kind of, watu wa mkono to that extent. The involvement of a parent that I expect is a parent is brought on board about the student's academic progress. They are briefed. They learn, my child has weakness in this subject and this and this. What are the reasons for this performance here and here and here? What is causing my child not to concentrate in class? That's the kind of involvement I look towards. Not about these theatrics of you're taking photos or doing this, because that one is not adding value whatsoever to the learner.
Sticking bins, and that's what I've seen
and
my niece do.
on the same note that Mung'athia is talking about, I think one of the biggest criticisms that was often to the curriculum that was replaced by 844 was the creation of disparity between some social class in the community. That during the former curriculum that was replaced by 844, it was criticized that those who came from well-up families, while others were going for the Form 5 and Form 6, those from poor families, those from rich families would go for universities at the abroad. So they came up with 844 to narrow down so that there is once you're through with the high school, all of you join the university at the same time. So because the others would have found to take their kids for external studies somewhere in the abroad. So when we now bring in 844, we were supposed to solve that crisis of desperation and disparities in terms of the social classes. Now, when we come to involvement of the parent in the CBC, we are slowly taking ourselves back to the disparities in terms of social class. Because when you tell a parent who has spent his day in Vibarua somewhere that the kid is supposed to come home, help in forming of the beads, or the parent is even struggling to bring food on the table, then you again now bring the scenario of we have the rich families which can afford to have a house girl to carry the activities with the kids, and the other family is somewhere in the villages where even the parent comes home extremely tired, has no time for the kids, for the books, doesn't know even how to help the kids in terms of the assignments, doesn't know completely. So in other words, what we are doing now, we are saying, let these people who can afford in taking part in the academics of their kids, do it. Those who cannot afford, let their kid continue languishing in the academic downgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, when we talk about the quality being downgraded, Samson, as you mentioned, does this mean then that by the time we're reaching to after grade 5, then 6, then 7, yeah, that's primary now, so that by the time they're out, then they won't be as the same quality as their counterparts, like us who did the 844.
Of course, I will say, the focus of CBC should have been, by the time these kids are exiting maybe primary school, they have some skills, some values, because it's also focusing on values, like patriotism, love, courage, all these things.
There's nutrition, hygiene.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with how it is being done, that's why I started by saying that CBC on paper is very good. It's a very good idea. But on implementation is a very negative and weird thing, because like Patrick has mentioned, to me, if we carry on with this program to the end, we'll end up creating more inequality than 844 used to do. We scrapped 844 saying some schools, the big schools, could afford to review, revise, and do all these things, giving them advantage over the other schools in exams, performance. That was the criticism that we're having towards 844. And we said, let's bring a system that is not focused on exams. Now, that's a wrong notion, because even CBC is focused on exams. It's only that we have changed it from exams to assessment. We call them assessment. Now, again, we have made them in a very confused way. Because, for example, I'll give you an example. I was talking before he came here to the show. I was saying, when my daughter closed school last term, she came with a report book that is written approaching expectation, meeting expectation, exceeding expectation. That's the ranking. Oh. So I went to the teacher, of course, and I asked her, what was the expectation in the first place?
So you know the approach.
So how do we rank these students? Now, there's the teacher is doing, and there's a report that is going to be taken to NEC for that continuous kind of assessment. Now, you can't tell me I'm a teacher teaching in a certain school, I'm going to write for all my kids not meeting expectation, yet I expect my performance to be reviewed by the employer, whether TSC or private school, again, for my either promotion, salary review, and all these other things. So that creates an opening whereby teachers are still going back to that issue of, I will give grades, based on how I want them to be reflected. So we are lacking uniformity at the end of the day. Then number two.
So it's not as standard as just marks were and grades were.
It's not standardized because, for me, I had an issue because I was asking the teacher, how do I know my child is meeting expectation? What was the expectation in the first place? Mm-hmm. Now, because you can't tell that, that's by itself opens a very big space for people again to be canny. You know, there is a school that will write everybody is meeting expectation. So at the end of the day, we are passing people we are churning people out without testing their capability. We don't know what their real abilities are. Now, number two, coming to it again, we are not giving them any skills. Remember, the countries that have succeeded in doing CBC, talk of countries like Denmark, Scotland, Ireland, you know, these countries in the UK, most of them, in the United Kingdom, the European nations, because that's where we are picking this from, and to some extent US, some states in the US, those countries that have succeeded in doing this, they have invested a lot in the future. Because we're talking about CBC creating workforce and manpower for the future, maybe 30, 40 years to come. And this future is technology. So you're supposed to give people skills in either mathematics, engineering, science, technology, and all these areas. Mm-hmm. But then again, by the time they are going to exit, assuming this is the grade 6, now they're exiting there without any tangible skill. You have taught somebody to do beadwork. Did a Maasai in Amanyata go to school to learn how to do beadwork? He didn't go. You have taught the child to make a carpet, you know, a mat, 1 meter by 1 meter mat. There is a factory in Australia producing these mats in their thousands in a day. So what value are you adding to this child? You know, these are questions that we should be asking really at the core of it before you say we're giving these children scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the CBC in general, we move away a little bit from the student and just the other people that it's affecting. Say, bookshop owners and people who, you know, provide to schools, the middlemen and all. So when the curriculum changes, then they stay with their old books. I know a bookshop owner who, during all these times, even before the CBC, when just the syllabus was changing, then there's nowhere to take those books. Just stay with them, or a parent comes and says, what can my baby use to revise? Remember, there's this one for the old syllabus, but it's still good, they can use it. So are we factoring in other people who facilitate learning as well? Yes, Patrick.
As I said earlier on, is that we have a complete disconnect between the policymakers and the implementers. Because if we have to look at it in a broad perspective, there are a lot of stakeholders who are supposed to be involved in the developing and the implementing of a curriculum. We have, first of all, to begin with, what are the resources we are using in implementing the curriculum? Who are the producers? Who are people involved in that lineage from the ministry all the way to the student? Because we cannot now scrub off the booksellers, those who own bookshop. We cannot now scrub off the publishers. Is the government or the ministry able to now hold the publishers from publishing new books and releasing them to the market in the process? The truth be said, nothing like that is there. There is no monitoring between the publishers and the government. The publishers are left on their own. Either they go on losses or not, government is not concerned. Mm-hmm. Because if anything, we were supposed to have given this time to also run it off completely and ensure that if it's bookshop, they are now ready, the books are packed, and they are told no more buying of these books. If they are publishers, no more publishing of these books. They just come in and just say, let's do this, without involving the stakeholders who are part of it. And I was sharing with one of the teachers from a certain school, and I happened to have visited him actually in the school. And he told me, you just come and see the kind of the confusion we have around. What happened is that with the inception of the new curriculum, there are new books that are coming, of course, to different schools. You go to a school library, each student has got a book. Mm-hmm. Each student is given a book. Then after that, the ministry is bringing books to school just for storage in the library. These are course books, not revision books. You meet a library which is, half of it is full of books. Students do not want to take those books anymore because I have this book, why should I take it again? My parent bought it for me, why should I take it again? And the ministry is not concerned whether the school has got books or they're in excess or it's just wastage. So ideally, there's a lot of things that are not into place as far as the ministry and the participant in the education sector are concerned. There's a lot of losses that will come in place. We end up wasting a generation. We end up wasting financially. We put people into crisis. Sure.
Yes, Mung'athia, you want to weigh in on the same?
One way I will weigh in is just when we rolled out the CBC, there were issues with the books, quality, people talking about errors, printing errors and all this. Because the way it was done, it was like an ambush. So everybody was running towards, if it's a publisher, is running towards producing the new books, because of course they have to remain in business. And at the end of the day, the minister not given any guideline on what should be done, what is this. So it's just a syllabus that is out there and everybody is guessing. So what did we end up with? Books with errors, books with the wrong content, book with, all these things. And even right now, we have not streamlined that again. We're still having quality issues in terms of the material, the instructional materials being used for CBC. So at the end of the day, this entire process is affecting everybody in the chain. They be manufacturers, distributors, the booksellers, talk of even the technology sector, because again, we are talking about the gadgets that they're supposed to be using in schools, the computers. Do they have software for that level of learners again? Because we are taking them to schools. We are talking of teaching children about technology, but then we are not equipping their systems or the computers with the softwares that are valid for their age or for their time. Because you don't go open as a computer, you want to start teaching the package, the normal packages to a grade 1 people. You want to teach them, I don't know, typing and doing all these things. So at the end of the day, there is a very huge disconnect between the players. Again, it's a mayhem that has been caused by the ministry and its reactions, because it's just reacting to events that are happening day in, day out. And it's really putting everybody into chaos. Everybody from right people inside the ministry to the external parties that support the education sector.
Okay, and there was a time, a book that had sexual explicit content, and there was an uproar among parents in different groups and across social media. So in terms of, who checks that? There seems to be a disconnect there, because then if this is the curriculum, then does that mean we have 20 books for nutrition, 30 books for hygiene? What's the control measure?
What ideally should happen, and this is what was happening before, is the government does not control who is the author or this thing. So what used to happen, and what should be happening is the government releases a curriculum. They gives out a syllabus. This is what is supposed to be covered maybe in grade 1. Now, there are teachers or there are people involved, either educationalists or teachers practicing, will go and develop content for that kind of, or that level. Okay. Again, they submit it to KICD, because it's the regulating body in terms of content that is consumed. And once KICD approves it, it is taken up by the publishers. Now, through the mechanism that they take, either somebody can publish it directly, or they can enter into contracts with the publisher to produce and sell and pay royalties. That's a whole story behind it. So, but at the end of the day, it is content produced. Now, government ministry gives guideline, content producers provide content, and then it is ratified by KICD. Now, what could have happened for that book to appear in the market, and not only that, there was the issue of the guy with the helicopter. When I grew up, I wanted to be a politician and flying helicopters. All these stories. So what could have happened is this. In that rush of implementing the CBC, everybody was so busy. So for instance, some people at KICD maybe were supposed to ratify. You are supposed to ratify work that could take maybe a whole year. That process that you could study the book a whole year, go through its content, various content, review, revise, get it back to the content creator to change and do all these. Those processes were bypassed completely. It became
a crash course.
It was a crash course. So the book comes, it's in my desk. I'm the guy at KICD. I'm not talking for them because I don't know what was happening by then. But you're given 20 books. You have to do this and this and this and this. So what do? I have to pass, because again, there is a timeline. By next week, these books should be printed. They should be in school. Now, it goes with the publisher. The publisher, again, is also under pressure, because remember, they are being contracted by the government to print books from government directly, now currently. So they are under pressure to produce maybe 500 million books of this series in 1 month. What do? They don't have time to counter-check again. And even if you find an error, you have no time to send it back to. So it was a chaos that was created by a kind of people who are not really thinking prior and thinking ahead of time.
Okay. And as we wind up, Patrick, so then what is your big idea of how, this is where we are at, the rollout is already on, grade 5 now, the pioneers of this CBC. then what? If the CBC is not really working, is there anything we can do at this stage?
Well, that remains one of the biggest elephant in the room to address as far as what you can do, because there is a lot of issues that are underlying that are affecting the rollout and the final stages of the CBC. Like now, next year, 2022, we're expecting to have the cohort of the CBC, that is the grade 6 that are coming out. One is left wondering, where are they going to land? Because we're having a very accelerated program of, next year, we're having 5 main exams. The KCC, 2 KCCs, 2 KCPs, and then now the class 6 final exam of the CBC, the first exam of the CBC. Now, when we release these pupils to the junior high school, where are they going to land? Are they going to the secondary schools, or they will still remain in their respective primary schools to continue with their grade 7 and grade 8 and grade 9 that is supposed to be in the junior secondary school? Yeah. So there is a big gap that exists that none of us is understanding, not even the teachers themselves, not even the parent, not even the people, because they don't know where next to land. So ideally, I wish that the government would take time before we get to the next year, whereby we are supposed not to be having a transition of the levels. Before we get to that time, the government would have taken it as an initiative to educate the learners, the pupils, and prepare adequately for where they go next. Because we are on the CBC that we don't know where we are heading to. No one knows what next. Not even the parent. Like initially, when especially from the villages where paying the school fees is a problem.
Very briefly, because we have to.
When a student, people get to class 7, the parent knows that I'm supposed to be taking this kid next year to Form 1, where and how I'm supposed to earn the kid. This time, no, they do not know. So the government now should go in and start preparing the parent and all the stakeholders on how we should address the whole issue. Yes.
Okay, yes, Mung'athia, what's your idea of how we should proceed at this moment? Because this is where we are at.
Currently, I will say we are at crossroads. We are not so sure that to turn left, right, or proceed. So for me, my take would be, let the government produce or provide a roadmap. Tell us we are going to junior high school in 2023, because next year we are graduating the grade 6. So we're going to junior high school. Tell us now, just 2 things. This junior high school, are they going to proceed now grade 7, 8, and 9, because they are 3 years in their current primary school institutions, or they're going to go to high school institutions? Now, if they are going to proceed in their current primary school, are we going to bring high school teachers to primary level to come and teach? Or who is going to be tackling this point of this junior high school? Is it the primary school teachers, or is it the high school teachers? Then number 3, do we have enough infrastructure? If you're going to take them to high schools, can we accommodate an extra class or 2 for them? Okay. If they're going to remain in the current primary institutions, can we accommodate that extra, the grade 9, again, in terms of infrastructure? So it's a whole lot of confusion. My take would be, let the government provide a roadmap so that we can know whether it's viable or it's not. It's not too late to redeem the situation.
Okay, and that is where we conclude our conversation. Samson Mung'athia, right next to me, an educationist, and Patrick Mwenda, who is a secondary school teacher. That is how we conclude our conversation here. We have been talking about the CBC. What do you know about it? Is it really working? They have been weighing in on the same and saying maybe the government needs to give a clearer roadmap as we head on to grade 6 come next year. I am Nancy Nalima. Thank you so much.
We value your feedback and welcome your complaints about our programming and